Welcome back to another episode of Kandi Unfiltered, the place where truth is spoken boldly, faith leads the way, and we don't shy away from tough conversations. I'm your host, Kandi Cox, and today we have an incredibly powerful episode lined up for you. I'm sitting down with someone who knows firsthand what it means to stand firm in faith, fight for conservative values, and refuse to be silenced. Jennifer Lancaster has been a force in the Republican Party for years, leading at every level, from grassroots organizing to winning key leadership positions. But when she fought to bring America First changes to the Arkansas politics, she faced an unimaginable backlash. Instead of backing down, she doubled down, taking her fight for truth to the courts and launching Arkansas First News to make sure that the people get the real story. Today, we're unpacking it all. We'll start with Jennifer's background and how her faith has shaped her path. Then we'll dive into the fight that changed everything, the lawsuit, the unjust removal, and her mission to take back conservative media. Finally, we'll talk about something close to both of our hearts, educating the next generation through Constitution Camp. And Jennifer will leave us with a powerful word of encouragement, especially for the women listening today who might be wondering if their voices matter. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and get ready for a conversation that will challenge, inspire, and remind you that standing for truth is always worth the fight. This is Kandi Unfiltered, and this is episode 3, Faith, Freedom, and Fighting Back with Jennifer Lancaster. Let's get started.
This episode is brought to you by Pretties and Grace, a faith-based boutique offering high-quality home decor and gifts at prices for every budget. From stunning vases and greenery to statement seasonal pieces for every holiday, plus the sweetest gifts, they truly have it all. Pretties and Grace has 3 locations, their main store in the heart of downtown Benton, along with shops in Malvern and Fayetteville. You can also browse and shop online at prettiesandgrace.com. A huge thank you to Pretties and Grace for sponsoring this episode.
Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's take a look at our menu. Today, we're going to start with our appetizer, which is Jennifer's background and faith, right? So every good meal, you have to have an appetizer.
Of course.
That's, to me, one of the best parts of the meal.
And it's even better if it's fried.
Fried calamari.
Oh, yes, sister, yes.
And fried dill pickles.
All the things fried.
That's right.
We're
That's
Southern
right.
girls.
That's right. Well, listen, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your early years in conservative politics.
Okay, so I was born in Memphis, which you're a Memphis girl.
Yes, I am.
I was raised in Jonesboro, Arkansas. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. My parents they had us in church every Sunday, every Wednesday. We were very engaged and involved in our local church. My siblings and I were all homeschooled. We used the Abeka curriculum, so I think a lot of moms are familiar with that one. It's a really sound curriculum. So let's see here. But unfortunately, my parents, around the time that I was, I think, 19, they divorced. It was an ugly divorce, unfortunately, and really took a toll on me and my other siblings. But we made it through. My dad remarried, and that my stepmom has 2 kids. And so I'm now the oldest of 6. Okay. So we're like the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
So family reunions are always a lot of fun.
So you can relate to my big family, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I can.
Okay.
Big families are so much fun.
They
and
are.
Fortunately, we're all really conservative. So it really is a lot of fun around the holidays.
Good.
We're all doing, the Trump dance and talking about how terrible the government is, and
right.
So it's good times. But yeah, so that's that. I would say my faith and how I grew up in that very conservative home has certainly shaped me to who I am today. I'm pretty black and white. And
Right.
when I believe that something is right, I will stand firm on that. And so that has propelled me into a lot of different areas throughout my life where I had to stand firm on issues. And I think I was just naturally drawn into the political arena because of that. Because in my opinion, there are a few areas in our life where what is right and what is wrong is more clear than in the political arena. Some people think there's a lot of gray. I don't see it that way.
Right.
I see a lot of people compromising, but I see the political arena as being one where it is so incredibly important that we stand firm on principle, because if we don't, we start compromising, that is when we start sliding down that slope into chaos and misery, which
That's
is what I
right.
think we're experiencing now as a nation. I mean, fortunately, with this new administration, things are getting better, but
Right.
we still have a lot of turmoil that needs to be fixed.
Right, right. And how has your faith shaped you personally and professionally? Because you are an attorney. And so talk about that.
So my faith, early on, I shouldn't say early on. I'm 41 now, so my late teens, early 20s is what I'm referring to as early on. But I had this realization that, I guess to kind of get it a little bit personal, I was one of those kids that always wanted my parents' approval.
Yeah.
I really craved it, but I never really got it. And there was one semester in law school where it was a really good semester for me. I accomplished a lot of great things. And I remember going to my dad and telling him all that I'd accomplished,
Right.
really hoping that I would,
Atta girl.
Yes, I would hear an atta girl or good job, Jen, or, those things that kids crave from their parents,
Yeah.
that praise. And I didn't get it. And while I know that may sound sad, it was good for me,
Right.
because I realized then that I will never get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll never be good enough in the world's eyes. I'll never be, successful enough. And at that point, that is when I had to take a few days. I took some time and really had to analyze what had happened and what I was realizing through that, because I was like, I will never be able to accomplish anything more or greater than what I've accomplished in this semester. And if that's not good enough, it just never will be. But that is when I realized I need to stay focused on God
Yeah.
and seek only His approval.
Yes.
And so that is really what has driven me ever since then, since my early 20s, when I had that realization that I'll never be good enough for the world. Christ warns us in the Bible that we will be hated.
That's right.
That they will hate us because of Him.
Right.
And I'm just to accept that and only seek His approval. And it was actually last year, my daughter Victoria asked me, she said, "Mom, are you ever worried about getting shot? Because you make a lot of people mad." And I said, "No, I'm not. The only thing I worry about is hearing, 'Well done, good and faithful servant,'
Yes. Amen.
at the end of my life." And because so often we get wrapped up thinking, this is our life
Right.
and it's all we know, but it really is just a drop in the bucket of eternity.
Yes, it is.
And so what we accomplish during this short little time really affects forever.
Right.
And we have to keep that perspective and not make decisions based on immediate satisfaction in the here and now and
Right.
approval from others.
And that's such a great lesson to learn so early in life. You said it was in your 20s, your early 20s, when you were in college that you learned that. And that's truly the hand of God working in your life, because it's such a hard lesson to learn when we do seek approval from our parents and don't get it. I was that way too, where I did not get the approval from my parents. And so, in my own life, it was, will I ever be good enough? Right. And then, and I did not grow up in a Christian home. So differently than you, I did not grow up in a Christian home. I grew up in a very moral home. Right. And so with myself, I was very inward focused and really tried to look to where my approval was going to be. And thankfully, the Lord had His hand on my life. And when I surrendered to Him, that's, where I was like, I have to seek the Lord's approval, not man's approval. And my kids often laugh. They go, "You don't care what anybody says about you." Like, I really don't.
Yeah.
I really don't, because I'm not living for other people.
Right.
I'm living to please Jesus, and I want my conscience to be clear before Him. And when I make mistakes, because we all do, I go to Him and ask for forgiveness, right? And I know what God's Word says, and He casts it as far as the east is from the west, and I take Him at His word that He forgives. And as long as I have my eyes on Him, then I'm on the right path, right?
Right. And it's so freeing, isn't it?
It is. It is. Because I don't have to worry about how people view me,
Right.
what people say about me, what people think about how I view the world. I view the world through the biblical worldview. That's all that matters, is between me and the Lord, and,
Right.
and that my conscience is clean before Him. So what a valuable lesson to learn at an early age.
Yeah, it was, and I'm grateful for that.
Right.
Was I disappointed and hurt? Of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
that's natural.
Right.
But God He worked in my life then, and He continues to work through my life now. And as you said, it is so freeing, because you just cast off those shackles, because
Yes.
you really are bound to the world when you're worried about what somebody's saying, what somebody thinks. You can't control that.
No.
And you're never going to gain the approval of the world, no matter how hard you try. So you just stay focused on God, and there's so much freedom that comes with that. And it's so sad to me that the secular view is that if you're a Christian, oh, well, there are all these rules.
Right.
It's actually, they're not rules. They are guidelines to a happy and free life.
Right.
And so it's a blessing to be a Christian. And it was a great lesson for me to learn.
Yes. One of the things in working with women that I do every day, many of the women that I work with come from very broken places. And they're always seeking for love and approval, of course, in the world. And they worry about, because when they're making an adoption plan, they worry about what other people say and, how others perceive them. And one of the things that I talk to women about all the time is that you cannot ever control what people think, what people say, or how people feel. You can control how you respond and what you do with it. And you learn that as long as you're absorbing that like a sponge, it controls you. But once you learn how to put that rock in the place, and that rock is Jesus, right?
Right.
Then it's like water off a duck's back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a lesson, like a definite lesson that you can lean into about standing firm in your beliefs when something really tough that you've had to face?
So let me make sure I understand the question. Is there like a biblical lesson or a scripture that I cling to? Is that what you're asking?
Just something that you've personally learned when you're to stand firm in your faith when you have faced a really hard adversity.
I've actually been in a number of situations where I've had to stand up for what I believed was right.
Yeah.
And I think it just goes back to the core of, who am I living my life for?
Right.
Yeah, the world is throwing a lot of ugly stones at me, but, we're called to be the light. We're called to be
Yes.
the salt and the light. So a purifying agent to expose what's being done, right? In Ephesians, we're called to expose what's being done in the darkness. And part of that is illuminating what is happening and then being that light. And so, like I said, I live my life to glorify God. I want to be the hands and feet of Christ on this earth, and it's going to be hard.
Right.
And so I know that. And oftentimes, sometimes I can see it coming, and I just cling to His promises and His faithfulness. And I can say at this point, I have faced so many challenges and adversities in life, and I can say God has always been faithful, always. And so sometimes when I am feeling a little down or a little beat up,
Right.
I cling to those promises. I also remember, And I think a lot of people forget this because we often think, well, I don't deserve this and what's happening isn't fair. But think about how the world treated the most perfect man that came to earth to die for us, and he did nothing wrong.
Right.
And I'm worried about what I deserve.
Right.
So it helps me keep that in perspective, but also think about his disciples too.
Yes.
And how they were slaughtered.
Yeah.
I mean, they really were. They suffered awful deaths. And so, again, I keep in perspective how short and fleeting this life is and what my purpose is here on this earth. And I just hope that one day I hear, well done, good and faithful servant.
Amen.
So.
Me too. Well, now we're going to dig into the main course, which is, like my favorite part, the steak, the meat. So we're going to talk about the battle for conservative values and the birth of Arkansas First News, which is very exciting. But isn't it interesting that when God wants to do something great, oftentimes we have to go through a battle to get there.
Yes.
And so I feel like that's where we're about to go is so, you had some strong leadership roles in major grassroots impact. So talk a little bit about that, about getting into politics and.
Sure. So I've actually been in politics for a long time.
Right.
So even early on, I would say right out of high school, I was writing articles and guest bloggers and for conservative news outlets. And I was doing a lot of that. Of course, as I got more focused on my studies throughout college, some of that had to fall to the wayside. But in law school, I became the president of the Bowen Law School Republican chapter. So I did that. And speaking of standing firm, I was the only person at the law school that would say abortion should be abolished, full stop.
Yeah.
It's really, really rare.
Yeah.
Our chapter was not big.
Right.
Mind you. I mean, we're in the law school.
And you just made it, you just ran half of them off.
Right. And then, when I said it, we were in a meeting, their faces dropped like, what? And it was just Republicans in this meeting too. So, but nonetheless, so I've been involved just in different ways. Right out of law school, I wanted to be involved in politics, and I started looking around, and frankly, I was so disappointed by what I was seeing. I saw a lot of people claiming to be Republicans, having no idea what that even meant.
Right.
Even running as Republicans, and they certainly did not
no idea what the platform even says.
No, they just knew they had to run as a Republican to win.
Yes.
And so I washed my hands of it. I just didn't want any part of that. That wasn't me. That's not why I was involved.
Right.
I really wanted to see conservative values promoted, and I wanted to see our elected officials being held accountable to those values. And so I just decided that wasn't for me, and so I got out and focused on the law firm. And then Clint and I got the case where we ended up suing Hunter Biden. And while I had voted for President Trump in 2016, I'll be honest, I didn't have a lot of high hopes.
Right.
I was like, I'm voting for him, but I don't know if, the White House is about to become a stage for a new reality show or what's about to happen here. And so I, again, kind of checked out, had two little bitty babies, and was focused on the law firm. And then we got the case where we ended up representing Lyndon Roberts. And I thought, you know what? Sun Tzu said, know thy enemy. And I have a feeling both presidential candidates are going to be after what we have. Yeah. I started doing a little research and realized Trump was doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
And I said, Clint, what he's doing is exceptional. And so that propelled us to join the local Republican Party. So we got involved, and we were embraced by the establishment, and, encouraged to run for positions. And, I something wasn't right in my spirit. I'll put it that way.
Well, because they didn't know what they were embracing.
It's true. Yes, prickly porcupine. But it took me a little while. So it was about 2 years in, and that my eyes were opened. Mm-hmm. And I realized that, this is not about principles.
Right.
This is about money.
Yes.
Really, at the end of the day, that is what the party is about. And once I figured that out, that is when I said, well, I can't be silent. You know, this is why our country is in the shape that it's in.
Right.
And so anyways, I started standing up more, being more vocal, being encouraged to run for positions, which I did. And, I'm grateful to all the people that voted for me. I won overwhelmingly many of my all the seats that I ran for, and until I was kicked out.
Right.
About 2 months ago.
You were the chair for the Saline County Republican Committee.
Yes.
And you were also the president of the Saline County Republican Women.
Yes. So actually, I was the first vice of the Saline County Republican Committee. I wasn't the chair. I was the first vice. And then I was the president of Saline County Republican Women. And then I was the chair of the 2nd Congressional District.
Right.
Yes.
Well, you became chair, right? Once the chairman had resigned.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, you did. I know. It all kind of runs together.
Yes, it does. So I did hold that position.
Yes,
You're right.
You did. And the chair for the 2nd Congressional District.
Yes.
Right. And that was a good fight that you put up for that. And you got overwhelmingly voted for that position in the 2nd District.
I was very honored. Yes, I took on the incumbent who was endorsed by French Hill, Congressman French Hill. And from everything I had heard, when I had asked, well, who is a chair of a congressional district? Who is that? How did they get that position? The first person I asked said, well, the congressman picks that person. I was like, okay. How interesting. But is that not true, though?
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, this is how even our Republican Party works. We think we're electing people, but they've already been selected.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're just somehow convinced that our vote matters.
Yeah, because they put out their slate of candidates.
Yes. And then they handpick the people that actually get to vote.
Yes.
And we could spend another hour and a half on that.
Right.
But we're not actually electing. But nonetheless, I did end up, praise God, and I'm so grateful to everybody that trusted me. I ended up beating her 73%.
Yeah.
So it was.
We had a huge grassroots movement in the 2nd District that made that happen. And I was very, very proud of the 2nd District for what they did there.
Me too. Yeah. It was really great to see everybody come together because it was, like you said, it was a vote for conservative values. That's what it was. It said we're no longer going to be beholden to the establishment.
Right.
We want to go in a different direction. And so it was great to see people come together and stand up for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you went on to win the chair of the congressional district and the state convention.
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit.
Well, so every 2 years, our party has a state convention, and it's where delegates from across the state come together representing their respective counties, and they come together and they vote on really important things like rules changes and platform changes. And I was asked to run against Joe Wood, our current chair, who had been selected by Sarah Sanders.
Right.
And again, by the grace of God, I won that one.
Right.
And the people stood up and made some phenomenal changes that were long overdue.
Yes.
And prior to that, the party had done, I think, everything they could to stop us.
Right.
Everything they could, from even trying to prevent us from renting space in the adjacent building.
Right.
They were trying to stop us. They actually cheated. And we caught them doing that. They had brought in some folks and gave them delegate badges when in fact they were not delegates, but they knew they would vote for the establishment side. So it was very eye-opening, very disappointing. I should also say, as far as paper ballots issues and medical freedom and closing the primaries, which is a big one. All these were rules changes that had been submitted prior to the convention.
Right.
And the people should have, under our rules, should have been allowed to vote on them. But the chairman of the Rules Committee, who is 100% beholden to the governor, tried very hard to prevent the body from even hearing it.
Right.
So the vote for me was really a vote against what the establishment was trying to do, which was preventing the people from actually governing.
Right. And I just want to tell you, I was so proud of you at the state convention. And there's a lot of pressure there for you, and you handled it so professionally with such grace. You did such an outstanding job. You even called out your own husband.
Oh, goodness.
I think you gave me a couple looks or two because I wanted the parliamentarian out of there.
Oh, I know you did. I know you did. But thank you. That means so much.
You did such an incredible job for the people. And that's what I go back to is you represented the people very well.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. It's so sweet. But it was fun because really all I did was just get the apparatus out of the way.
Yeah.
That's really all I did. I just let the people, and that's what the chair is supposed to do.
And that's
it's
exactly
just facilitate
what you did.
the discussion.
Exactly.
It was the people that accomplished those momentous events.
Right.
And so, closing the primaries, I couldn't have done that. I mean,
Right.
that wasn't within my authority.
Right.
All I did was just allow the people to vote on it. And the
Right.
people voted overwhelmingly to close them, and among so many other things, really conservative, great things. And so it was a good day to see everybody come together and work together. But unfortunately, as you know, it was short-lived.
Yes, it was. But isn't that how Satan works, right? Like he wants to come in and cause disruption and confusion. And he definitely seceded amongst the grassroots about sowing the seeds of discord and confusion, which is truly well, it's really sad, right? It's really, really sad.
Yeah.
But we know that there's a broader picture that God sees that we don't see.
Right.
Right. And one of the things that I think personally is that it's a time of exposure. And sometimes God allows things to bring about exposure. And I do believe, as much as I hate that happened, and I hate that that the RPA did not follow what the people went and accomplished, I believe that God is exposing things. And even through this legislative session, you really see what our Republican elected officials are voting for and the bills that they're bringing. Right. And it goes against everything that we stand for as the party platform, right?
Right.
And so I just believe, as much as I hate that all that happened, I believe the bigger purpose God has a plan for, and I do believe that some of that is exposure for change.
Yeah,
for
I
great
agree.
change.
Yes, and as children, while there are bumps in the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
We know that God is faithful, and that this is a part of His plan.
Right.
And that's the important thing, and that and we can rest in that knowledge and have peace in it. No,
That's
it doesn't
right.
mean that it's all going to be flowers and roses. We just know that it is part of His plan, and it's going to be for His glory and our good. And as Christians, that's what we want.
Right. And so you did such an incredible job at the state convention, and you did allow the people's voices to be heard, and you allowed the voting and to go forward as it should have. And I was really proud of you because you stood up under the pressure of the RPA and you allowed exactly what should have happened under the rules to take place. But there was a very corrupt backlash that came against you. So talk about that for a little bit.
It came from two different directions.
Yes, it did.
I guess I'll start with the establishment side first. Well, of course, the party, like I said, there's a lot of money being exchanged and involved in this, more than your average Arkansan knows.
Right.
And so the party was absolutely not going to let that happen. I remember standing at the podium right after the convention had ended. Their room had pretty much cleared out. There were only a couple people left. And I looked at them and I said, and now the real fight begins.
Yes.
And that was after 10 hours and
Yeah.
my feet were throbbing.
Yeah.
But I knew they weren't going to stop.
Right.
And so sure enough, they found a lady up in Washington County to file a complaint. wasn't even filed correctly. But we were told about it. Never
Right.
saw it.
Right.
But we were
Right.
told about it. Didn't get a chance to respond to it.
No.
And then
Because charges can be brought against you.
Oh,
and
by an anonymous person at any time, any place. You don't even have to have the required signatures. You just have to trust the RPA. They're there. I guess they're written in invisible ink. Anyway, so this complaint was filed. Now, in the interim, I had been contacting the RPA trying to wrap things up. Mm-hmm. There were things that still needed to be done. They absolutely would not return my calls, would not return my emails, text. I stopped by, talked to Joe Wood face to face. He clearly was not happy that I was there. But at that point, nobody's responding to me. I didn't know what else to do. I knew work still needed to be done. He absolutely would not answer my questions. I said, well, have you gotten my email? He said, I get a lot of emails. I said, okay, all right. So this is how we're going to behave.
Yeah.
So anyways, so just a couple of weeks after that, we find out about the complaint. They have not a hearing, but a meeting to tell us what they determined the results of this complaint were going to be. The result was that they nullified everything that we did except of the few things that they had pre-approved. So the election of the electors and I think there were one or two small things, minor things that they said, well, that can stand. But everything else, that's nullified. We're done. You're done. You don't get to do that. Of course.
And that's always baffled me, like how in the convention do you say, well, this part of the convention stands, but this part of the convention doesn't?
It's wild, isn't it? And there's nothing in our rules that allows this. As a matter of fact, it's very clear that what they did is not allowed by our rules.
Right.
But from what I have heard, because I was a part of the RPA executive committee, so I was very much on the inside, which is why they had to get me out, because I was telling everybody what I was witnessing.
Right.
But what their mentality was, and they literally said this, what are the people going to do? Sue us? Yeah. And so very few people will, right? We'll complain and we'll gripe about it and we'll talk about it, but very few people can take, that kind of action. We shouldn't have to take that kind of action. But unfortunately, that was their attitude. So nonetheless, they shut down the people's voice and nullified everything. And there were a lot of problems then because Joe Wood refused to talk to me, as would the general counsel. They went and signed a fraudulent document, a document that he was not authorized by law to sign.
Right.
And so I caught that because that was one of the things that, we needed to talk about. I caught it. I exposed it. I brought it to the RNC's attention. There was actually pressure for me to sign an equally improper document, which would have benefited the party, especially in the lawsuit that was pending at that time, because by then I'd filed the lawsuit.
Right.
And so I knew what they were doing because I have had colleagues that have represented Trump that signed an elector's certificate that was not 100% accurate and have faced lawsuits. One friend has spent over $1 million defending it. So I knew exactly what was going on, because I have this network across the country. And so, but a lot of people didn't understand what the party was trying to do. And by then there were some folks who did not like me. We can get into that. And they decided to spin it. I mean, part of it they didn't understand. And they just don't have the knowledge. They didn't understand anyways. But they took what they could to intentionally try to start a negative narrative against me. So, but going back to the elector situation, I actually provided a legal pathway that would have allowed me to remain loyal to my commitments to the convention body that had elected me, while also securing 100% without a doubt the electors for Trump. Which the party itself had put in jeopardy. But no, the powers that be were trying to pressure me into doing something that would benefit the party. And so I stood firm.
In which came the talking points that it was all your fault.
All my fault.
Yeah, that you had put those electorates in jeopardy of Trump not getting his electorates here in Arkansas.
That's what they said. And some of those people knew the truth,
Right.
but they were really mad at that point. And I will tell you, so sadly on the other side, so what we just covered now is the establishment side. And when I
Right.
say establishment, I mean the people that live and breathe the party.
Right.
You know, they just move around from one position to another.
Right.
You know, and they're more about compromise and back scratching. They're actually not going to get dirty. They're not going to
Right.
stand
They're
up for
rubbing
anything.
elbows.
They're just going to do, what do I have to do to get here, and try
Right.
and networking, right?
Right.
So, and then on the other side, we have the grassroots folks. Well, and you probably remember this. We have a group, or we had a Facebook group for a lot of our people here in Sling County. And after the convention, of course, people were excited. And we
Right.
were all excited.
Right.
And we were hopeful for the future, but you could see there was some pride.
Yeah.
And I even made a post in there. I said, guys, we've got to be careful.
Right.
You know, pride comes before a fall. And it's in moments like these that pride can really start to show itself. So we have to remember this was God. This was not our doing alone.
Right.
And we need to stay focused on Him. And we need to remember that our goal through this all is through all of this is to educate.
Right. Because Saline County led the way.
Yes.
I mean, it is undisputable that Saline County led the way. We have a lot of talented people within the committee here. A lot of talented and passionate people. Passion is a great thing, but it can also get you in trouble,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it can. Yes, you have to make sure that you're responsible.
Yeah.
You're not being reckless. But passion, when used correctly, is a wonderful thing.
Right.
But unfortunately, there were some folks, a handful, that decided, you know, it was their turn to start demanding, and their pride just was showing.
Right.
And unfortunately, it was the leadership of Sling County Republican Committee.
Yeah.
They had obtained those positions, and after we were successful at the convention, that's when they just decided that they wanted to control all things. And they were even making comments like the women need to step aside and let the men lead. And, you know, you could just see that desire that once we broke through that barrier,
Right.
then all of a sudden they
Right.
wanted to lead,
Right.
which was
Right.
interesting to me. You probably
Yeah.
noticed that as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So the women really were the ones that did the dirty work, did the strategizing,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
put themselves out there, you know, took the slings and arrows. We burst through that wall. And then all of a sudden you have these folks that are like, okay, get out of the way. And they were men. Get out of the way, ladies. It's
Right.
our turn now.
Right.
And so we had to deal with that. But unfortunately, one of their first actions, and it was shortly after the convention, was they wanted to toss out about 40 of our, no, I think it was 33.
33,
About
yeah.
33 people that they had that the leadership had dubbed rhinos, which means Republican in name only.
Right.
So they didn't like them, basically.
Right.
And so they said, well, we can get rid of them. They did not include this motion on the agenda. They did not notify anybody that it was coming, including the 33 people that could potentially be removed.
Right.
The rules did not require this, even though they had someone get up and tell the body that it was required by the rules.
Right.
So that's when I got up and I said, well, no, it's actually not required by the rules that we remove them. The executive committee is to give us a recommendation. That is required, but we don't have to follow it. And we
Right.
don't have to kick them out. So I thought I was very respectful and very kind. There's actually a video. You can go and check it out yourself. But immediately after, I faced some incredible backlash
Yeah.
because I spoke against this group of men.
Yeah.
And
You were working against them.
yes. And they were embarrassed that their motion failed, which that is exactly the very thing that I had been fighting against.
Right.
So if people within our own movement or people that claim to be friends start doing things that I believe are improper, wrong, unfair, I'm going to speak up.
I know that you said more than on one occasion. You said it multiple times. Let's not become what we hate.
Yeah. Yes. And they had in that moment become what we had replaced.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. They didn't tell the people what was coming, which is we've talked about this,
Yeah,
right? That is
right.
what the establishment would do. They would plan what was going to happen, but not notify the people with appropriate agenda, right? And then everybody would stand there stunned and blindsided, like, what just happened?
Right,
you
right.
know? And so here, the very people that were supposed to be allies, that we were supposed to be fighting to change these things, to bring fairness and transparency,
Right.
had become those who were working behind the scenes and hiding things from people and trying to sneak things in with dishonesty and deceit.
Yeah.
So anyways, like I said, I spoke up, was very respectful. Immediately after, I actually went up to the chair and I said, hey, we need to talk, because this is where this is headed. It's headed in a dangerous direction.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, it was that same night that one of our most conservative justices of the peace, he stood up against the library and the pornography that we had been fighting against. He resigned because of the way that the leadership of the Saline County Republican Committee had been talking to them and treating them.
Right.
And it wasn't fair. It's one thing to have disagreements.
Right.
I think we should have disagreements and have civil discourse. I would actually like to see more of that,
Right.
where people are able to just disagree in a very civil and philosophical, well-reasoned manner. I think
Right.
our society would be better if we had that, without people taking offense.
Right,
Because
right.
we have, especially in politics, what I've noticed is a lot of people will take offense if you disagree
Yes,
with them.
yes.
But we need to have that iron sharpening iron, and we'll become better for that. But nonetheless, going back to that night, I asked the chair, so we need to talk. And we spoke the next day. I explained to him how what had happened was not right.
Right.
And that should not happen again, how that was the very thing that we're fighting to replace. And we've got to guard ourselves against allowing pride
Yeah.
to take over. And so, but then the focus had already become, I'm a snowflake, I'm a rhino. Somebody had said, we were losing funding for a building because I was helping the rhinos. No, I was just standing up for what was right and fair.
Right.
And those people that they were seeking to remove should have been given notice.
Right.
And the body who was to vote on that should have been given all the facts.
Right.
And an opportunity to consider it. So nonetheless, that's when they really turned on me. But I started to realize in that same moment, because that same night, I should also say this, that same night, there was one person named Scott Gray. He called me a milk toaster and a traitor, because I spoke up against them.
Right.
But this, again, Kandi, isn't that what we fought for? We want
Right.
people to feel comfortable speaking
Right.
up and sharing their
Right.
thoughts. And so,
And I know when you were the chair, one of the things that you would often say is, if you don't agree with me, if you if you want to challenge me, please do. We're here to learn from one another. And so you always, as the chair, had the posture to allow that civil debate, and knowing that how do we accomplish things if we don't talk it through?
right. And if we're all seeking to understand,
Right.
if we're all seeking what is best for the committee and for our state,
I mean, good grief, we had over 200 people in our committee. Like 200 people aren't going to all agree on everything all the time.
Right.
Right. But we can be civil. And if we look at what the rules say and we go by the rules and have decorum and have respect for one another, we should be able to work through things. Right.
Right. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, we weren't seeing that at the Saline County Republican Committee at the time. Under that leadership, it became
changed
very
so
divisive,
quickly.
very quickly. Yes.
Very quickly.
There was no real leadership.
Right.
It just became very divisive, and there was already tension, of course, but it exploded, I would say.
Leadership is vital. An organization is only as good and as strong as the leadership is.
Yeah.
And when you have a leader in place that has no leadership abilities and takes their P's and Q's from someone else, that especially if they have an ulterior motive, you don't have someone who's in leadership that can hold things together. And that is definitely what we had towards the end when all of this was going on. We had a leader in place that I think the majority of the committee thought that he would be a good leader, right? But how quickly we learned that he did not have the leadership ability.
Right. And that was another one of those learning experiences for me because I go to church with him.
Yeah.
I actually recruited him to the group, and he called me saying that he wanted to run for the position. I was like, okay, great. Because did I know him real well? No.
Right.
I've probably had, a few 5-minute conversations here or there with him. Right. But I assumed, right? Right. Wrongly, I assumed, because we went to church together, that he would meet certain expectations that I had probably unfairly had in my mind about how he would perform as the chair. Mm-hmm. And so, I was very disappointed by how all that played out. But, my pastor said something about maybe a week or two ago. He said proximity to Jesus does not necessarily mean faith or that person is a Christian. And in the context that he was speaking, he was talking about Judas, who walked alongside Jesus, witnessed the miracles, but betrayed him in that way. And, that's, I'm kind of digressing here for a moment, but it was an important lesson for me because through it all, I was hurt by a lot of the things that my fellow church member had said, right? Probably more so than anybody else, because I'm like, I go to church with him. And he was saying things like, I'm comparing me to the Clintons, and just every opportunity he got, he just disparaged me, right? But here's the funny part. Through all of that, he kept sending his 5th grade stepdaughter to the Sunday school class that I teach. So I don't know if he really believes I'm that bad, because I couldn't imagine sending my child to be taught by someone that,
that you felt that way about.
Right. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I just think it's important for people to realize that people in the church are going to disappoint us. This was a good learning experience for me. They're going to disappoint us. We go to church not because we're perfect or we think we're perfect, right? We go to be fed because we are Christians, which means we recognize that we're sinners. Right. That's the first thing. We have to recognize that we're fallen, recognize that we're sinners in need of a Savior.
Yes.
And so I think just to people who have been hurt by others in the church, just remember that they're there because they're broken too.
They are broken. And can I just add to that we cannot lose sight of the fact that we live in the South, and I mean, what do? You go to church.
Yeah.
Right? And going to church does not equal having a relationship with Jesus.
That's right.
And, I remember years ago, Chris and I were in this church, and we had the same group of friends that would go out to eat every Sunday afternoon after church. And one Sunday, one of the friends said, why does he always preach like if, half the congregation is going to hell? And I said, well, probably because they are.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're feeling convicted that that's bothering you, you need to examine your heart.
Right.
Because he has to bring the word, because although it's the same people there all the time with a few visitors scattered in and out, the fact of the matter is that most people, this is their checkbox, especially in the South.
Right. You're absolutely right about that. I just know a lot of people, and I've heard about studies where people will say they don't go to church because somebody in the church hurt them. And so I just want to say, I get it.
Yes.
I've been hurt too.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have, and so many others have too. And I went through a couple of weeks where I didn't go to church. Well, I went to Sunday school to teach my class, but I didn't go to service. I'm going to admit that. And then I called my friend and the pastor's wife, Luann Huey. And I just said, Luann, I'm just going to be honest, and I just have to tell you, I love her because we can kind of skip the the chit chat. And I'm like,
Yes.
I have
You
a
can get to the
problem.
meat.
I got to tell you what my problem is. And I need you to speak truth to me. And I
Yeah.
said, I just don't want to come to service because I don't want to see him.
Yeah.
And she said, first of all, she said, there's someone else that's going through the same thing you are, same because of him.
Right.
She goes to the church too. And she's like, yeah, she told me she didn't want to come either. And I said, but I know that's not right. And she said, well, you've got two choices. You can either go find another church or you can walk in church saying, this is where God's called me. I'm here and I'm going to stay. And then she said, and you can come sit with me. And you know what? I love that though. You can come sit with me.
Come sit with me.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's, and one of the many reasons why I love her, because she just spoke truth to me. And she was right. I knew she was right.
Right.
Right. I just needed to
and
hear
our
it.
focus shouldn't be the man. It has to be Jesus. So,
Yes.
'cause that's why we're there, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
But it's hard.
And I was wrong.
It's hard.
Yes, and it is hard.
It's
And
hard.
I set a poor example and I made mistakes and I knew I was wrong. And that's
Right.
why I reached out to a friend that would just be like, okay,
Right.
we got to fix this.
Right.
And so I've been back ever since. But anyways, I guess it's something else that I want to say is find those people. They are in the church.
Yes.
The ones that will love you, the ones that will come alongside you when you're
Right.
like, oh, life's a little
Speak
tough
truth.
right now. Speak truth in
Yeah.
a loving
In a
way.
loving way. That's right.
And then come alongside you. Come sit with me.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And that's what she did. And I have to say that there are actually quite a few people that are in the Saline County Republican Committee that go to the church, and all of them, except the one
Right.
person, have been so kind and supportive of me, including the pastor and his wife, Luann. Luann's been amazing through this time.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately for me, I was focusing on the negative,
Right.
right?
Right.
Instead of these wonderful people over there who stood alongside me, spoke
Right.
truth, and are fighting for the exact same things that we've been fighting for.
Yeah.
So I know it kind of got off topic, but it's an important lesson
it
for me,
is.
and I wanted
It
to share
is.
that with other people.
And Dave and Luann are like two of my favorite people. Like I have my top favorite, and they're at the top.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I appreciate so much about them, because I've gone to Dave with several things. We've known them for a long, long time, and one thing I can count on always is he's going to be truthful, and he's going to speak truth and love, and he's going to pray for you.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that about them. And he does such a great job at shepherding his flock.
Oh, yes.
He really does. So we go through all that in Saline County, and then Jennifer gets kicked out of the Republican Party for 20 years. So how in the world did we get there?
Okay, so after we've gone all over. Yes. So let's see here.
How did
So
we get to that place?
there was an anonymous complaint, which our rules do not allow for either.
Right.
But the party promises that the required signatures were there. They said that the people just didn't want their names on there out of fear that I would retaliate. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Jennifer, you're an attorney. So does someone get to have charges brought against them without a fair trial?
Of course not. I mean, the whole thing is ludicrous.
I keep going back to them like, aren't we the party of rule, of law and order?
Justice.
And justice? Like,
Yeah.
where is that in all of this? I mean, it's from convention on. It's not there.
There was no fairness or justice. There was no truth. There was
Right.
no transparency.
Right.
But that's what I was fighting for. So even one of the first battles that we fought coming in was they voted to raise the filing fees. Arkansas now has the highest filing fees in the nation. So if you want to run for office, you have to pay an exorbitant amount.
Yes.
To run for Congress, $30,000 that you pay to the party just to be able to run.
Just to put your name on the
Just to put
ticket.
your name on the ballot. Then you
Yeah.
have to go and raise, they say at least $1 million, if not
Yes.
multiple millions, to run a successful campaign.
Right.
So they are creating these artificial barriers to keep people out, to keep their chosen in.
Right. Keep us little people away.
Yes.
Right?
And so I actually talked to the media about it. I've told the people. And of course, at the next meeting, boy, was I lectured. I was lectured by the executive members. They did not like that I was talking about what we were doing. And I said, but we represent the people. They should know exactly what we're doing. I actually even asked to have the whole thing recorded so that those who wanted to watch could. Of course, that never happened.
Right.
But I tell you all that because I was trying to bring transparency into the party.
Right.
So the people would know exactly what's going on. And the party apparatus itself, Joe Wood and the others, did not like that.
Right.
And so nonetheless, so moving forward, ended up filing the lawsuit because the party nullified the closing of the primaries, among other things that we did at convention, filed the lawsuit. And I would say that this complaint was absolutely in retaliation to that lawsuit. And actually while they were deliberating about what they were going to do, it came up that the majority of the conversation was about the lawsuit and how I had filed that and I shouldn't have filed that. And that should be a rules violation, even though it's not in the rules that you can't file a lawsuit.
Well, they did challenge, what are they going to do? Sue?
Right.
Well, they found a few of us that said, that's exactly what we'll do.
Yes, we will. And it's still pending.
Yeah.
So in federal court. That's really what it was about. They gave me 5 minutes to defend myself. They didn't. Oh, I have to tell you this. So the anonymous complaint was filed. The woman who helped draft it, who signed it, and then who lobbied for signatures, then chaired the committee that investigated me.
I'm sure this is all clean. Right?
Oh, of course. But it gets better though. Okay, so there was, I think, 5 that sat on the committee. So that was the chair. The woman that filed the complaint against the convention sat on that investigative committee. The woman who wrote the rules, the rules review that nullified everything we accomplished at the convention was on the investigative committee.
Right.
And then there was another woman who just could not stand me. They actually left the convention early after I won.
So how many people are on the executive committee?
On the executive committee, I think there were about 22.
Okay.
22, 23.
And so how many were on this committee, this investigative committee?
5.
So there's 5 people on the investigative committee.
Yes.
And how many of them were women?
All 5.
All 5.
Yes. So all 5, and then they give me,
we women can be so nasty.
Yes, some can, but you're awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're pretty awesome too.
We have some really great women.
We do have some really great women.
And so I hate that, there is that unfortunate reputation, and some it is deserved, but I tell you what, I've been so blessed through all of this with some really strong prayerful women, and
we have some great women around us.
Yeah, we do. Mm-hmm. So, but okay, so back to this. It was filed, and then they say you have 72 hours to issue a response, and the complaint was like 100 pages long of foolishness. I mean, it was ridiculous. 100 pages long, 72 hours in the middle of a work week. Right. And keep in mind, I do run the law firm. I homeschool my kids. I'm very involved in a lot of things. That was by design as well.
Sure it was.
They knew that would be really hard, but also knew the fix was in. Like the writing was on the wall.
The cake was baked.
Yes. And because I know how they operate.
Right.
I knew it was coming. So nonetheless, 72 hours. They did not have a hearing. They didn't ask me questions. They didn't send me a text saying, hey, can you clarify this? Nothing. None of that. So you're given about 45 days to conduct the investigation. So like I said, at the very beginning, I sent my response in, what I could get in, and didn't hear a word from them. Next thing I know, we have this meeting, and I'm given 5 minutes to defend myself, but they were also trying to dissolve Saline County, even though there was no complaint against Saline County.
Right.
None of it. But they were just trying to get rid of Saline County.
They needed to go sit in a corner, right?
Yes. Well, and I will tell you something that was interesting is the comment was made by somebody. They go, you still have a lot of support down in Saline County. And that's when I thought, oh no. And I think that's part of the reason why they were intent on dissolving Saline County. It wasn't enough just to take me out.
Right.
They realized that this was a movement.
Yes.
And so they had to
because
just...
Saline County led the way.
Yes.
In the grassroots efforts to really organize to get prepared for the convention.
Yeah. Yep. So they just took us all out. They banned me for 20 years and said if I ever run for office, I automatically get a not recommended status. And there was something else in there that they did. I can't remember. And then they unfortunately banned Saline County. They dissolved it for 2 years. Again, none of these things are fair. They didn't follow the rules, but they don't care about the rules. They don't even care about the law. So here we are. But this is what we're fighting to expose and clean up. And, you know, I do feel that God has led me to show what's being done in the darkness.
Yeah.
And hopefully people will realize that there are problems with our Republican Party.
Right.
And we have a lot of people that are Democrats. They're just Democrats, that they have infiltrated our party. And you will know them by their fruit. The Lord tells us that. And so you need to be judging people based on how they vote, how they act, their philosophy, and how they conduct themselves. And not just by what they call themselves.
Right. That's exactly right. So you get kicked out for 20 years and you're going to get a not recommended vote with the RPA, which, oh gosh, as if we take them for anything. But you did not go sit in a corner and cry and go, woe is me, and feel all defeated. I think what it did is you had your armor on and you were ready for battle. And so now we launch Arkansas First.
Yes, we did.
Yes. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so it was actually a thought that I'd had. I was watching my husband in a legislative hearing, and I saw...
Watching him would make you want to start...
Make you want to start
something else comedy hour, but...
Yes. By the way, check out Kitty Barf on Arkansas First. That is my husband. You will laugh. But I was watching him, and I was watching the legislators just grill him over some help that he had given to to a paper ballot organization. This is an organization focused on election integrity, and he had guided them through that process. He had helped them through that process.
Right.
And they were just grilling him, and some of the questions, they were totally unfair, more accusatory.
Right.
And it was abundantly clear to me that they were not worried about the integrity of the process. They were just trying to find any way to find fault with anybody that had anything to do with it. But if they could find it with Clint Lancaster, boy, that would just be the golden ticket for them.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it was during that hearing that one of the legislators even asked, because they wanted to know who funded the process. And they said, is the person that funded this movement, the paper ballot movement, the same ones that funded the lawsuit to close the primaries? So you could tell that it was all politically motivated.
Right.
These people were using our taxpayer dollars to wage a political war against somebody. It was disgusting.
Right.
And absolutely appalling. And so in that moment, it was good I wasn't there.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
I'm the sassy one between Clint and I. I'm definitely, people think it's Clint. No, get me fired up or things are going to get wild. And I was definitely fired up. But I had to be with my kids. We were at a homeschool event. So I'm watching this, and that's when I had the idea. I was like, this is not going to be covered fairly. And I knew it wouldn't.
Right.
Because even our local media and a lot of our conservative organizations are so beholden to the elected officials. And the reason why is they want to stay on their good side so they can get things done.
Right.
But again, it's all compromise. That's all it is. It's compromise. And compromise has gotten us to where we are. Nobody's standing firm.
Right.
Nobody's saying, this is right, and I'm not budging. Mm-hmm. You do not see that at the Capitol, and you do not see that with any organizations that are regularly seen at the Capitol.
Right.
And that is why we started Arkansas First, was to change that. We're going to say, this is right, and we're not budging.
That's right. That's right.
So, and I'm really proud of our group.
Yes.
We have some really strong people. Of course, you're up there every Wednesday talking about what's going on, and you're doing a fantastic job. And Jimmy Cavin's up there, and he's testifying and letting them know what what he thinks.
Oh my gosh, I love Jimmy.
Me too. I love Jimmy Cavan.
Yes, I love Jimmy Cavan, and I am thankful for Jimmy Cavan. He stood up for me and defended me and started the fight of Saline County.
Yes.
But my husband was not there that evening, and I'm thankful for Jimmy. I'm thankful for Jimmy's boldness, and he just doesn't back down.
No.
And he is a fighter by nature, right? And not a fighter in like he's a bully. He goes against the bullies.
Yes.
He fights against the bullies. He fights for the least of these.
Right.
And he fights for fairness and for the people. And so to have him sitting beside me every week is just like such a blessing.
Yeah.
Like I just love it.
Yes. People need to realize that the modern day bullies often wear suits and
Yes.
have a silver tongue.
Yes.
And
Jimmy wears a pink shirt.
Yes, he does. And I don't know that I will ever see him in a suit. I never have, and I don't think I ever will. I don't think that would happen. But he will stand firm. He will stand up for people that can't stand up for themselves.
Right.
And you're certainly a fighter too. You stand up, but in that moment,
Right.
a man should have come to your aid, and in a room full of men, only one did.
A room full.
And it was Jimmy Cavan.
I made that very clear that night when a couple of men were running their mouths about it.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked at them and I said, how long has this been going on and where have you been?
Yes. Yeah.
Where have you been? Because finally we had someone put a stop to this.
Yes. And that was the problem that we've seen in Saline County. We were being bullied.
Yeah.
And I will actually tell you, during when I started standing up to the executive committee, I had a couple of people call me and say, if you don't back down, we're going to make sure that you lose all your positions. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm not backing down. One person even said, you don't need to do this right now. You don't need to fight them right now. At least wait until, X, Y, or Z. And I said, no. These are my friends.
Right.
These people are being bullied, and I'm not going to back down to a
Right.
bully. And if I lose position, so be it.
Right. Who cares?
Right. I mean, I wasn't going to run again anyway.
This is not my life.
No, this is not my life.
I'm here because I feel called, because if not me, then who?
Yes.
Right? I was talking to Logan, who was on Arkansas First Reports podcast, and he was talking about how he's feeling compelled, not because he wants to get into politics,
Right.
because he feels like he needs to get into politics because of what he wants to fight against.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it's the same way here. Not in it because I wanted to, but if not me, who?
Right.
Like, we have to have strong conservatives stand up and fight for our country, for our children's future, for our grandchildren's future. That's why I do this, is because of my children, right?
Right. Same here. And I just knew that, how would I live with myself watching the country going in the direction that it was,
Yes.
knowing what awaited my kids and grandkids,
Right.
and be silent?
No,
That's just not an option.
No.
It's just not. And I know a lot of people, you've probably gotten the same thing. A lot of people find it really hard to believe that, I would fight like this and not want anything out of it. Everyone's like, you're going to run for office.
Right.
When are you going to run for
Oh,
office?
yeah.
I can tell you right now, I'm not running for office. I have no desire to run for
Jennifer,
office.
I really think that you should run for office so that you can get the not recommended, so that the rest of us can recommend you. I just think it would be a fun game.
That was the one time I was tempted. I was like, oh, see, now y'all are kind of making me want to go run. But, it's just not, God is not calling me in that way. I
Right.
like being home at night. I don't
Right.
like going to these meetings all the time. I'm going to be
Right.
honest.
Right.
And while I have been asked, I even prayed about it. I'm like, God, if that's where you want me, I'll go. But I need you to make it a desire of my heart.
Right.
Right? Like, put that on my heart. And he never has.
Right.
And so I'm grateful for that. But no, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I will go where God calls me,
Right.
even if it's not where I really want to go. I'm going to go because I know that's the best place for me to be.
Right.
I want to be under God's umbrella of protection.
Right.
And I want to be in his will. And so we'll continue to fight and expose what's going on, and hopefully just inspire other people to get involved in the fight. I mean, my hope is that we're going to see other families, other moms, other, grandmas, get involved and just start speaking up. It doesn't have to be a full-time job. It shouldn't be a full-time job, but we do need your help.
Right.
We need you up there speaking out and engaging in that civil discourse with the legislators and with other folks, and educating them, because we really can turn this country around. It was a gift that our founding fathers gave us, that we can rule and not be ruled, but if we're asleep at the wheel, we will be ruled.
Exactly.
And right now we're being ruled.
Yes.
But we can turn it around.
And so Arkansas First is, like 3 months old. Almost 3 months old. Not quite. Mm-hmm. Almost there. And so there's Arkansas First Committee, and that is really conservatives across the state that come together and have the heart of what we want to do is fight for our state, right?
Yeah.
Fight for our country. And then we have Arkansas First News, right? So talk about that.
So Arkansas First News, you can go to Arkansas First, Arkansas, ARKANSAS, 1st.com, and you'll see articles from a myriad of contributors.
Right.
So you're going to get a lot of different perspectives. And our slogan is by the people, for the people.
Right.
And so you're going to get a lot of different styles, a lot of different topics, but we're going to be telling you about what we're seeing, because we are in the trenches.
Right.
And at this point, we have a lot of experience in the party apparatus, and we know how things work. So we're not sugarcoating things. We are telling you the hard truth that a lot of folks don't want out there. But as you said, if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
Right.
And so, do we have a lot of haters? Of course. Mm-hmm. But that's okay.
It's okay.
We're going to stand firm. We're going to do what's right. We're going to educate people, and hopefully we can change things for the better here in Arkansas.
Right.
So, yeah, that's Arkansas First News, and we have Arkansas First Reports with you. And so you bring in some amazing guest speakers on the podcast, and you get more of a deep dive into what's going on locally and what's some current events. And so, and then we have Constitution Camp.
Oh, yes. Yep. We have Constitution Camp coming up, which is such a fun week.
It is.
And this is kind of like us going into dessert.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I'm thinking chocolate-covered strawberries.
Oh, yes. Fun.
That's one of my favorite desserts.
Oh, by the way.
And tiramisu.
Oh, see, Clint likes a tiramisu. The chocolate-covered strawberries, though, I just got some from Small Cakes. They had some over Valentine's Day. They're really good.
Yes. On Small Cakes now over there in Bryant.
I tell you what, those white chocolate, that's my jam.
You like
some
that?
White chocolate covered strawberries. Oh, yes, those are so good. Okay, so Constitution Camp. Yes, so this is our 5th year.
Can you believe it?
No.
It's hard to believe that we're having our 5th year for Constitution Camp.
Yes,
yeah.
And it's so exciting, and we have grown every year, and I'm so grateful to the churches that have allowed us to host it there. Our first year, it was at Crossroads, and we outgrew that space that year.
The first year.
So the first year, yep. Mm-hmm. And so we've been at Geyer Springs, and so that's been a fantastic avenue. We've grown tremendously, and we're expecting this year to be the biggest yet.
Right.
So,
we don't have kids just locally that come.
Right.
We have kids from across the state. We even had some last year from outside of the state, right?
Yes.
That came to Constitution Camp.
Yeah, we've had a couple, 2 or 3 years where kids have come from out of state and attended. Yes. And now, just last year, 2 new chapters opened up. One over in Cleburne County and one in Salem Springs.
How exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Ours is a week-long camp. In the morning, it's for 2nd through 9th graders. It's 9 to noon. And it's a fun week. I know some people might think, oh, that sounds dry and boring. It's not.
It's really not.
Because my kids attend, okay? And so we get input from the kids. We want it to be fun. We want it to be something that they come back to. And actually, we have a lot of kids that come back year after year.
Right. Well, because it's fun and it's interactive, they retain what they're learning.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they're learning it in such a fun, interactive way. So they are learning, they are getting smart,
Yeah.
but they're having so much fun.
They are. There last year, I think it was last year, one kid was heard walking down the stairs with his dad. He goes, "This was the best day of my life." I was like, yes. So I was really excited to hear that. And of course, my kids, like I said, my kids will tell me if they
Right.
don't like something. They told me they
yeah.
didn't like my hair coming here tonight.
Yeah.
They told me I looked old. My kids don't hold back, okay? And they love Constitution Camp,
Yeah.
and they insist on it every year. So
Yeah.
while it exhausts me,
Yes.
we do it.
Yes.
So it is a fun time. We have inflatables. We have a blow-up dinosaur that represents Leviathan. So the kids learn about John Locke and Montesquieu, and they learn about a social contract and a tripartite system of government. And they actually get to see biblical principles woven into our founding documents. We go through them together and say, oh, look, here is where John Adams says that we have our tripartite system. I'm sorry, it was James Madison who came up with the idea of a tripartite system of government, because in Isaiah, it says that the Lord is our king, our lawgiver, and our judge.
Right.
And so that was what solidified giving America a tripartite system of government.
Right.
So we go through all of those things. We spend a lot of time outdoors too, doing activities to help kind of reinforce. So it's learning while having fun. And they get to meet a lot of local celebrities, I would say. We have the fire department come. We have the sheriff come, who always brings their canine, which is always a big hit.
Yeah.
I think the canine could just come and everybody
Yes.
be happy. But we have a lot of great people that come and attend. And it's a fun week.
Yes.
And then we top it off with either a tour of the Capitol, which we've done all 5 or the last 4 years. We may do that again this year. I think we're actually exploring doing something else, a little different, but equally as fun. And then the very last thing we do is a big Celebrate America party. And we have a dunking booth, which I sometimes get in. We have a big old water slide and snow cones. And just, it's a time to bring the families together, see that there are a lot of like-minded families out there, and have a fun time celebrating the greatness of America, because we do live in a great country.
We do. We do. And we've got to keep it that way.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, we do.
We've got to take it back and keep it that way.
Right.
Right. Well, we've gone through such a journey. And I think about, everything that you've gone through over especially the last year. And, I know that there's women that are listening that feel sometimes like the world is just coming at them. Right? Mm-hmm. Heavy. Mm-hmm. And give those women, just woman to woman, some encouragement. And I think women sometimes have the hardest time finding their voice, or even thinking that their voice matters. Mm-hmm. And so speak to those women and tell them how much their voice matters.
Oh boy, does it. And when you say that the women feel like there's just a lot of heaviness.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah.
We all feel that.
Yeah.
I think just as women, we carry that because, the world is a dark place. It's a hard place. There's so many expectations on women too,
Yes.
And it's unfair, and we know it's unfair,
Right.
but it's there nonetheless.
Yes, it is.
And so it is hard, but that is why it's so important to just rest. Mm-hmm. Rest in Jesus. Take those moments to be still and cling to his promises. And I know I've had plenty of days where I have gotten down.
Right.
And I felt beat up, and I felt like, oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, Jesus, I'm ready for you to fix this.
Right.
But it will be in his timing, and his timing will be perfect.
Yes.
And so going to his promises and clinging to his faithfulness, because he is always, always faithful. And when you feel like maybe he's forgotten, or if you wonder if he's going to follow through this time.
Right.
He does.
Yeah.
And when he does, and you realize he has fulfilled his promise to you, you're going to realize, oh, that's way better than if you had done it the way I'd hoped you had.
Yeah.
And so, and we see that throughout the Bible too, just how
Yes.
God operates.
Yes.
So I would say, find your people, find the women who are going to constantly direct you towards God, who are going to speak the hard truth to you in love. And when you're feeling alone and beat up and things are hard, find that woman that's going to say, come and sit with me.
Come sit with me. That's right. That's a great ending to such a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for letting me come sit with you today.
Yes, I am thrilled. Thank you for coming. Well, this is the wrap of Kandi Unfiltered. Thank you for joining us, and please follow us on all of our social channels and subscribe to our podcast. Until next time, thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Pretties and Grace, a faith-based boutique offering high-quality home decor and gifts at prices for every budget. From stunning vases and greenery to statement seasonal pieces for every holiday, plus the sweetest gifts, they truly have it all. Pretties and Grace has 3 locations, their main store in the heart of downtown Benton, along with shops in Malvern and Fayetteville. You can also browse and shop online at prettiesandgrace.com. A huge thank you to Pretties and Grace for sponsoring this episode.